Lieutenant Worf was triumphant at the Batleth tournament on Forcus 3. There's a theory in quantum physics that all possibilities that can happen do happen in alternate quantum realities. And Commander Riker loves surprise parties. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
I thought he hates surprise parties.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 7, Episode 11, open 24 hours. Parallels, written by Brannon Braga, directed by Robert Weimer. This was November 27th, 1993, the final episode of 1993. Where were you, and how you doing today, Sirach?
Doing great. Doing great. Filled up my paper for this one.
Yes, sir. We would like to give a very special thanks to Jonathan Capps for sponsoring this episode and every episode this entire season, Season 7 of The Next Generation. Caps off to Jonathan Capps. Also, everybody, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that. And visit us at patreon.com/the7th-rule to support the show and become part of the community. Sirach, I've seen this episode before. We'll just leave it at that for now. I've seen it as many times as there are Worfs in the parallel universe. You've never seen it. What'd you think of it?
Well, I can say that, one, I liked it a lot. And really I liked it for the fact that it was really classic sci-fi, in my opinion. It opened with a log from Worf, a personal log, into his life outside of Starfleet, which is, the Batleth competition, which, it's something that we know he's good at and he practices, and this is a cool, slice of life for him. And then it just spirals into a classic sci-fi drama that I thought was excellently written, and I would absolutely say that Brannon Braga put a real high score up with this episode.
That's a good start. So, written by Brannon Braga, all by himself. There's no story by or co-writer or anything like that. And I do feel like upon watching this episode, I'm like, this is definitely a Sirach Lofton kind of episode because it doesn't have to be Star Trek. This theory could have been any sci-fi thing. It could have been a Twilight Zone episode, right? It could be a guy comes home from work in the 60s and suddenly his wife is wearing a different apron, or suddenly the dog is brown instead of white, or, somebody knocks at the door and then he goes and answered it and nobody's there, and so on. So this is just a really cool concept sci-fi episode that happens to be in the Star Trek universe. Did you get Twilight Zone vibes from it?
Absolutely. Right away. And I thought I was being smart and slick when I said, wait a minute, Data wasn't standing there. Geordi was standing there.
Oh, yeah, you were catching incontinuities.
They totally messed this shot up, and I'm thinking to myself, either they messed this shot up or he's hallucinating, and so, but I caught it right away, right? I'm like, wait a minute. I had to rewind it, as a matter of fact. I was like, are they messing the shot up? And so that was a good thing. I didn't even catch the cake and the different cake colors and all that stuff.
Oh, really?
That went past me. I did see Picard pop up, and that was weird, but it didn't make me think too much about it. And guys' plans change, and so, or maybe he wanted it to be a surprise that he was going to be there. So that wasn't too much out of kilt. But let me just say, this is an idea that I believe if anybody really thinks about it long enough, they've probably pondered on some existence of this idea. Either in a way that they wonder what would have happened if they played baseball all their life, or if they had switched sports, or if they had done something else, or if they invested in Apple when it was,
Oh yeah.
you
If I
know,
just
starter
put
company.
$100 in Apple back in
Yeah,
1984.
right.
Yeah.
And there's a parallel universe in their mind where that happened, right? In our minds, it's like, man, I almost did it. And then you're almost like in that moment trying to correct it and trying to jump over to that parallel universe, right? You're
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
get there.
Dude, I get stuck on what ifs, right?
Mhm.
Like you're saying, like my mind goes, well, what if if I had just done, and it goes on forever. And I have to like stop myself and be like, what do you like? I
Yeah.
can't. You can't. Yeah, I'm just curious. I just like playing it out and seeing what would happen. But then I realize I'm literally just wasting time. There's zero possibility it could happen. So what am I, for good or for bad? I'm just like, you like to let your train of thought think, what about if I
Yeah.
had gone to that thing? What about if I didn't go? What about if I did, and you can't help but be curious about it.
And your
And
mind is a supercomputer that
yep.
allows you to wander in those directions and create those hypothetical outcomes and kind of play them out. Like, what if I stayed with that girl and we actually did get married and have kids? And like, there's all kinds of these kinds of hypotheticals that play out in our minds.
It's like a holodeck. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just play the holodeck in our minds.
but
So
that is an equivalent to an alternate reality, right? That is essentially an alternate reality that we are able to perceive in our own reality.
it's a good point.
So, I mean, that to me is the best explanation for how this episode is relevant to how we all think in our own ways.
Yeah, and I remember this is the end of 93. This is right when like quantum physics is starting to pick up. I remember quantum physics really kind of picked up in the mid to late 90s and then kind of was raging in the early 2000s. I don't hear people talking about it as much anymore. Maybe it's just become part of the normal lexicon. It's nothing novel anymore, but
It's around. They talk about quantum computing and stuff like that. So yeah,
right.
and
Now it's
quantum
just kind of
mechanics is a normal
accepted.
thing.
Yeah.
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 So it is really cool. And now, of course, the nitpicker in me would say, if this is really the case, this is what my brain does when I'm watching this. If this were really the case, they would all look different. None of them would be born because with each decision, who's to say that a decision 70 years ago isn't the next parallel universe where none of them are born, or there's like a war and they all die? You know what I mean? Like, how far back do you want to go? And then your dad ended up marrying a different woman. And so you look totally different. Like imagine if Deanna Troi just looked totally different because she's half Luoxana and half some other guy, or half Bolian, which would be kind of cool. But then I kind of self-correct and I think, well, in universe, you could just say, well, it just skips over to, say, the closest parallel universe. And it starts right at this point. It's not anything before. Well, no, because it does go backwards. Because Troy and Worf were married like 3 years before. You know what I mean? So maybe it does just skip over to the very next one where just one thing's different and one thing's different and one thing's different. But if we can go backwards, why doesn't it go backwards 300 years when one little decision changed and then none of this exists? Anyway,
Yeah,
still really
it's
cool.
possible. Obviously, yeah.
Fun to think about.
And maybe those realities are not accessed by this reality because it doesn't convert, because none of those people exist at that reality that they're existing. So it's only maybe a matter of the realities that pertain to your existence that would exist. And the ones that don't pertain to your existence would not enter your field of consciousness, essentially. So there's ways to expand on that. You can talk it out, but I thought it was well executed. For me, I wasn't harping on the fact that there were multiple Worfs and multiple Rikers and all of these things. It didn't bother me so much. The idea that I liked was number one. I like that. I like that the realities kept changing. And I thought that made the story dynamic. for me, like if you just jumped into one reality that was set, and the only difference was you're married to Troy, but there is no other difference. Like you're still the same exact guy, but you're just married to Troy. Um, you might want to settle into that reality.
he's like, now, let's not be so hasty. Maybe I don't need to go back. But of course, he's not able to control it. But we did get some of that when, we're skipping ahead, but when Riker, disheveled Riker says, we won't go back. We don't want that reality. Like, can you imagine his feeling when they're just, on the edge, they're frayed edges, they're on the edge of destruction. The Klingons have destroyed everything, or was it the Borg? I think the Borg destroyed everything. And they pop in, and there's 385 or 285,000 other enterprises. And he's scanning, and he's like, they're all in better shape than we are. Every single one. He's like, we have the worst reality. We're the only busted up enterprise where it's just me and Worf and nothing else. All these other ships are like basically pristine. So basically, all these other realities are better than that. We're not going back. We'll take any one of these. These are all great. We'll take any one of these other ones. Worf, you can marry Troy. I don't care. Just, I don't want to go back to this Borg situation. But we could cover that a bit more later.
And Riker helped him out. He was like, okay, you don't want to go back? Let me help you out.
And I will make it a twosome. But I do want to say, for the record, this is, I know I talk about this sometimes, where I say back in the day, I would spend $19.95 at the comic shop. I think it was at Valco Mall in San Jose in the Bay Area, in Saratoga specifically.
Okay.
And it was $19.95 for one episode on VHS. And this was one of the episodes I had. Maybe I had like 20 or 30. This was one of the episodes I had. And because, I would watch an episode, think it's really cool, and I would go, pick out one, whatever. So I saw this one a ton of times. I loved it. I love this episode. It's so freaking cool because it really satisfies a hunger in me, and I think in a lot of people, which is what we touched on, the what if. It's really cool to think, and I think the writers probably had a great time with this because they've probably had these thoughts in the past, like, well, what if Riker, or what if Worf and Troy hook up, or what if Captain Picard dies and Riker is the new captain? Like, there's all kinds of what ifs in the writer's room. And so I think it's really cool that they could kind of play those out, and we get, oh, here's a reality where Wesley Crusher is the security chief. Weird, but it makes us think, like, how would that happen? He's totally an engineer, but maybe it was under the tutelage of Worf. Maybe Worf was like, you could be my only son. And he's like, what about Alexander? He's like, who?
Yeah. And then actually, this is the best fathering that Worf has ever done in an episode, essentially, just by trying to stand up for his son that he never sees.
I did make something in my notes where it's like, it's his birthday. It's Worf's birthday. And Alexander isn't even there. And my first thought was, he's a deadbeat son, too. So you got Worf being a deadbeat dad. You got Alexander being a deadbeat son. And they have a good understanding that way. Worf's like, don't expect me for anything. Don't.
Well, he made him a cast of his middle finger. He was like, here, Dad.
yeah, Worf's like, don't expect anything out of me. No expectations. And Alexander's like, fine, none out of you. When's your birthday? March? All right, I'm going out of town in March, punk.
Exactly.
Watch my Beetle. In fact, we'll have Troy watch my Beetle because I can trust Troy. You would let it die.
Didn't he go visit his parents? He visited the grandparents, right? So
is that what it was?
So both his parents and his kid don't want to see him.
No, deadbeat ass dad.
No, they were doing Worf a favor because they know what he wants on his birthday, to be left alone. So they took Alexander. It's a logical moment.
Yeah, so
But
I
I did
do
like
really,
that. I
I
like
do
that.
really
I
like it.
really
Yeah,
like. Yeah, I like this episode. And what I really liked too was I had to take time to draw this trophy that he got because
that's cool.
him holding this trophy, which by the way would kill you if you drop it a certain way.
He's got like a 7-year-old son. If that kid's running around that's what I thought. If he's running around the thing, he could headbutt that thing and get stuck in his head. And he's like pointing it outward. He's just daring somebody to get carved out with that thing.
I know it's just like one of those things where and here you go, and then they just like fumble it. Next thing you know, somebody's dead. Uh, but you know, the trophy design was nice. When he comes back and he wins ninth place, I was laughing because he was. That's when he got the most pissed off.
It just had a
It's like,
shit ball without the blade. You know what I mean? He was like, and he looked so disgusted with like, this
yeah.
doesn't even, can't even kill anybody.
The look on his face when he saw that ninth place trophy, he was more pissed off about that than changing rank, than changing ships, than different captains. He was like ninth place.
Yeah, he was disgusted.
It's like this morph is a weakling.
Also, it was cool that we have an episode focused on Worf. This whole what if thing gives us a lot of character development for Worf, not just because it's an episode about him, but because it shows us the different permutations of what could have happened with Worf. He could have been a first officer. He could have been dating Troy. He could have not had a son. And that gives you, in an interesting way, it gives you more character development because it shows us what the potential for his life was. He would have made a fine first officer, apparently.
And by the way, the way this was written was brilliant. Brannon Braga killed it. Let me say some of the moments when Troy walks in and she says, "Why was your door closed?" He's like, "Why shouldn't it be closed?"
Yeah. And you know what's funny is at that exact line, I wondered if that's how Brannon meant it to come out. Like, because that exact line, I wonder if he thought in his head, "Why was it closed?" And he would, most normal people would be like, "Well, why shouldn't it be?" But Worf is like, "Why shouldn't it be?" Like, who's it to you? Get off me. It's your damn problem. Yeah, it was really great line.
Most
Great
people
delivery.
would casually throw that way, like, "Why wouldn't it be closed?"
Yeah, what?
You know, it's a door.
That's peculiar. Why wouldn't it be? Yeah. But he was like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yes. Exactly. The way he said it was so funny. You know, the way it was written. And then he goes on to say, oh, the performance. That's what I wanted to say. Michael Dorn's performance was on maximum level. He deserves tremendous credit for this. Let me give you an example. When Troy walks in on him and he says, "Why shouldn't my door be closed?" And she's like, "Oh, don't be silly." And she walks in and she walks
Oh
past
my
him and goes
God.
into the bedroom. The look he gives.
It was so good.
Then he comes around the corner like, is this what I think it is? Like, is this what's really going on here?
That was too funny.
Masterful performance there because at first he's like, "Get the hell out of here," and then she's like, "Oh, don't be silly." She walks to the bedroom. He's like, "Is she walking to my bedroom?" Like he kind of like does like a thing, and then you see him. He's not fighting it up until she's like, "Sit down next to me," and he's like, "Oh, okay." And then she starts massaging his back and stuff. And he's like, "Wait a minute."
He's like, "Wow, counselor's very hands-on. This is a new counselor session." Exactly. But I will say, though, one thing I remember back in the day when I watched it, I was like, okay, you mean to tell me that he would be married for 3 years to Counselor Troy and his quarters would look the same as they do as a bachelor? Because everybody knows she wouldn't have changed one thing, right? You'd have the exact same quarters, except the painting would be on a different wall or something. I don't think so. I think there would be socks that you could see, or a flower, or a different lamp. I mean, there'd be something. So anyway, but we get it. It's still funny. But I do want to say the other thing that killed me with Worf was when he's like, the closest thing would be stepsister. Because at first she's like, what does that make me? He's like, oh, it'd be like a stepsister if you watch Alexander. And she's like, oh, I like that. That's fine. She's like, well, that means that my mother would be your stepmother. And the look on his face, and it only works because he's put in 6.5 years into this character. So we know who he is. And he was like, the look of horror. There was actually horror on his, like, I had not considered that. No, I will do what I must. Or something. Like, he was just like, I'll do whatever it takes for my son. Like, what a trooper. But that was a hysterical reaction. Jaw drops, man.
Oh my God. That's what I'm saying. Michael Dorn murdered that.
Yeah, he did.
He murdered that performance, because when I had to rewind that too, because it's like he realized how much he hates Luoxana. That moment of realization came upon him, and it was hilarious to watch. And by the way, Troy's reaction to watching him melt down was also equally funny, because she's like, "Oh, he hates my mom," right?
Oh yeah. The line he said was, "It is a risk I'm willing to take." A risk. Like, well, so help me, Stovokor or Kalis. I got to do it. Yeah. So that's what's great about, Michael Dorn is he doesn't have to play it funny. He's like Brent Spiner in that he's put in the work enough, and the writers have put in the work enough to where you put them in a situation, you give them a funny line, and the audience will think it's hysterical because of who it is that's saying it. And he knows that, and he played up to it. He was just like he had the horror on his face, and he was resolute. Like, I feel like a less sophisticated writer than Brannon Braga would be like, well, forget it, or I have to think about this. But no, it's funny for him to say, you know what? I'll do it. It is a risk I'm willing to take. Like to him, he's thinking this is the greatest. This is the greatest demon that I have exercised in my life. That, like, this is a hurdle that I've. It's just really funny.
It's like, I'm a true warrior. I must remain fearless.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
he was facing his biggest fear with that moment.
I don't know if Picard would do it. Picard would be like, I cannot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was almost as bad as when he was told that he has a son in the way. That was his other biggest fear.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break in just a second here. We also had a lot of non-appearance mentions and a lot of interesting things. Oh, and more character development. Real quick. For example, Nurse Ogawa, Alyssa Ogawa, she was
so beautiful.
Dr. Ogawa, and that is more character development for her. Even though it didn't really happen in this reality, it's more character development because it tells us that Alyssa Ogawa has what it takes to be a doctor. If she needed to be the chief medical officer, she could do it. Even though it happened in a different reality, we now have learned more about who she is, which is it's fabulous. I love it.
Nurses in general are very close to doctors as far as education level. And if they've been doing it for a long time, they damn near have the same knowledge base. It's just a matter of licensing at that point. But yes, I was glad to see that kind of pseudo character development for her. But it was beautiful, and she looked gorgeous in the doctor's outfit. That outfit was just, it looked amazing on her. So
yep. And this is another reason why I love this episode, is because there's so much in it. You got Ogawa, you got Wesley Crusher, you got Picard's gone, and Riker and Worf are the two, head honchos. Like, you get a lot in one episode. And another thing, the Bajorans defeated the Cardassians. And let's talk more about that on the other side.
That's a whole nother subject.
This is all really cool stuff, like butterfly effect kind of stuff. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, everybody. We will be right back on the seventh rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the seventh rule with Sirach Lofton. We have a very special guest joining us. Super excited to have Mr. Brannon Braga joining us again. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
We really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We loved having you. So happy and thrilled and grateful that you could join us again. First things first, this is such a glorious episode. Can you tell us, if you remember, where the idea came from?
Well, I have the Wikipedia printout,
All right.
and it's not very helpful. It's just like I'm reading, I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. The Parallels was season 7. It was somewhere around mid-season.
Mm-hmm.
It was an episode that I was really into quantum physics. At a time, I had read a book called Schrodinger's Cat.
Mm-hmm.
It was accessible enough to understand, and I was inspired by that book for certain ideas. And people weren't doing a lot of quantum physics stuff at that time. This was 1993. So I really wanted to get into the idea of the multiverse, of parallel realities that had different outcomes. I'd never seen it. It doesn't mean it hadn't been done in movies and TV. There's the mirror universe in the original series. That's not what I had in mind. I actually wasn't even thinking about that. It's only now am I thinking, that is kind of an alternate reality. But I wanted to do one. My concept was that a character gets unstuck and begins jumping between realities. I would put a little bit of a spin on this with a similar idea for All Good Things. And they're kind of similar. All Good Things was limited to 3 time periods in Picard's life. These are different realities. And I just thought it was a cool idea I didn't know if we could produce it, but I wanted to have, I think it was Picard the first time, but Ron had written the show Tapestry, and I didn't want to even go anywhere near that because that was so good. And I thought Worf was underserviced and needed something fun to do. And it turned out to be the right choice because I think Michael Dorn is really good in the episode. And his reactions, his stoic, trying not to completely flip out reactions are great. And there's great comedy in the episode when he realizes he's married to Troy for the first time. That's a very funny scene. Michael does a great job.
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, Brandon, this is my favorite episode of the 7th season thus far. We're halfway through the through the 7th, and this is my favorite. And it's also my favorite Worf episode out of all of the seasons.
Interesting.
I love this episode. It was fantastic. I thought it was just well written. I love the fact that he's not stuck in one particular parallel universe, that he's kind of jumping in between all of these. And I thought that was one of the elements that was original and just caught my attention. I want to ask you, what made you get into just the curiosity to want to know about these parallel universes or quantum? Like, where did that come from?
Well, the concept of multiverse, I first ran across in this book. I think it was called Schrodinger's Cat, or In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, something. It was like a quasi-layman's guide to some fundamental quantum physics. And I'd never seen anybody do something with the multiverse. That's not to say it hadn't been done in literature. I certainly had not seen it that I can recall in movies or TV. My biggest challenge, so I just thought it was a high concept. It was kind of like a cause and effect, that kind of idea. It was a big idea.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been done. So that's why I wanted to tackle it. And I haven't seen it in a while, but the scene where is it who explains? Is it Poor Geordie again? Who explains the multiverse?
Yeah, Geordie and Data, I believe.
And Data.
So, that times have changed. The multiverse is actually now kind of overdone. Marvel has baked it into their franchise as just something everyone understands. But when I wrote this, I had to really explain what this was.
It was way ahead of its time. I didn't even hear about this stuff till 10 years later.
Michael Piller and Jerry Taylor and the people I worked with, they didn't know what this was. So I was kind of like having to introduce this concept, not just of the multiverse, but that he had become that he was going between them randomly. And, how was he going to get back on track? And, and I did something that I still hasn't, I don't think, been replicated. And I kind of wish someone would do it with a bigger budget, which is when the parallel realities all suddenly occupy one reality. The collapse of the multiverse into one, and I remember when I wrote that in a script, I had a copy, maybe even the first draft, when I described that happening as an exterior with thousands of enterprises, I put in parentheses, Mary Howard loses consciousness. That was our line producer. Because I knew anytime you put something crazy like that, it's like kicking an anthill, and everyone's like, "How are we going to do this? This is crazy." So it was really just conceptual, and like any really great conceptual episode, it also gave me unexpected character things to do.
Absolutely.
And I just want to add a little bit to that, because the unexpected things you added in there, you had the Bajoran basically in charge of the Kardashians. It was reversed, right? Instead of the Kardashians. There were multiple viewpoints of the world, and the other one was Riker existing in a reality where the Borg was,
he didn't want to go back.
Yeah. And I loved that we got these different kinds of reality, not just the ones where everything works out fine, but also the things that are not that great.
And that I think that one moment you're pointing out with Riker and the Borg, the universe where the Borg took over, that kind of made the episode. I think it's what people remember. And sometimes,
Brannon, can I stop you there? Because that's exactly what I was going to say. It did make the episode for me as a kid watching this episode. That is etched in my mind for that moment of we can't go back. We won't go back. Like I tell Sirach, there are a few episodes back in the day that I would have to spend $19.95 to buy one episode on VHS tape. This was one of them. It was because of that moment, and I agree, this is the best Worf episode. I love it. It's an amazing character examination where you could really explore all the what ifs and characters. But I do want to say, yes, you are right, Brannon. From a fan's point of view, that's where it's just etched in my mind forever, and it affected me, and it made it so great.
And it's just a few seconds.
Yeah.
But it's the exclamation point on the episode that kicks it into, and you don't know this, by the way, when you're working on it. I knew it was a cool idea or a cool moment to have, but I didn't, until you see it and how committed Frakes was.
Yeah. It
was very well directed, the whole thing. Of course, I wish we'd had more time and money to make the ship, different versions of the ship look different. It's like they barely were able to do anything on the bridge.
Yeah.
The time and money it would take. So I had to rely on characters. I had to rely on it just being conceptually interesting and character driven.
I want to give credit to Robert Weimer because I believe that he did a great job directing this episode. There was a few moments there that were shot beautifully. For example, when Riker is talking to alternate universe Picard, and he says, it's good to see you. Like, I miss you, because he doesn't exist in that universe. Right. And Picard kind of looks at him, not kind of really gathering what that means, because he sees his own Riker behind him. so he doesn't miss him, and I thought that was another beautiful moment, like just these, different ways people perceive based on what their reality is.
Yep.
And sometimes, it doesn't come across what you're trying to convey. And I thought that moment, the way it was filmed, beautiful. Brandon, you hit every note of a Twilight Zone classic sci-fi episode that I love to see when I watch these. And you also added an element of, like, I want to say horror, but it felt like suspense horror. It's just it hit all of those notes for me. Plus, getting to see a potential relationship of Troy and Worf play out, and even change Worf as he comes out of it.
Yep.
He orders champagne from the Replimat. I love that moment there.
Yeah, I mean, because the Worf that we know has experienced all of these things, and he doesn't forget them. So he's had a little taste of different realities. So of course it would affect him, and that's a nuanced thing. Dorn deserves a more. I don't want to say more credit, but playing a character with heavy makeup, where you're losing half your forehead and a lot of your face, you're losing. Um, it's the character of Worf was more nuanced than I think. I think when he went over to your show, he really blossomed, and I was really happy when that happened.
Yeah, but this to me seems like the almost progenitor to that. This episode feels like the linking bridge between them.
In a funny way, I think probably, I can't verify this, on some level, people behind the scenes were like, "Oh, we got, he's untapped. There's a lot of untapped stuff here that Dorn has to offer."
Yes.
And of course, he was a popular character as well. But sometimes it's one episode or one moment in one episode. It's interesting the things that people remember. It's also interesting that the collective consciousness of it, because the Riker Borg moment you point out, I think if I'm at the Wikipedia entry, that is considered to be kind of the moment of the episode. So you weren't alone. Everybody had that reaction.
Well, it made it so real to have this guy that is we know him as calm, cool, and collected. The only thing he stresses out about is which girl he wants to date tonight. And he's in this world that is so dark and so horrible that he is desperate. He is killing people. He is just, it's a completely different version, but it's the same guy. And that just tells you, the world in which we live changes the character. And that really gave us the idea that things could have gone differently for the Federation. We're just in one of the lucky universes.
And because the multiverse concept, that there could be infinite branching realities with different outcomes, was a big new idea. Certainly new to Star Trek. It also makes you start thinking about those things. You start to think about the tiny decisions that we make that could have larger reverberations.
Totally.
So it was, successful on, a number of levels. Sometimes when I rewatch these episodes, I think, God, they're so slow. The pacing was different back then, but on the other hand, at this point, it's kind of like comforting, just especially when, like, you must know the maneuvers of the episode. So if it's on, it's comfort food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just the whole of the ship and all of this sound, these background noises that we rely on.
Wait, this was the first time you'd seen it.
This is my first time seeing it.
Yeah, so that's the most. So that's, to me, the most interesting aspect of this podcast right now.
It sure is.
Is that somebody who is part of the Star Trek universe, It's a real testament to what we were chatting about before the podcast, how vast this franchise is, that you still have a bunch of episodes you've never seen, and your reaction to them is really interesting. Especially in the context of so much modern Star Trek being around, that you would have a good reaction to this is really nice to hear.
And I've become a Star Trek fan watching Star Trek. I wasn't before, I will say. I was a part of it, but I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't know the worlds as well outside of my own little DS9, scripts and what I was heavily featured in. I wasn't really tapped into the whole world that you guys built with all of these storylines and offshoots. And so as I'm watching it, I feel like I'm getting to know people on a different level that I didn't know them before. Watching Worf or watching Colomini as O'Brien, getting
or finally understanding Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Right?
Yeah, finally
He's
getting
like,
to understand
that's what that means.
I'm like, that's what the hell that means, or that's why everybody wears those outfits when I go to conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just becoming a fan of the world, and I always claim to be a good, fan of. I think the gold standard for science fiction television is the Twilight Zone, and it will always be that for me. But because it's always, it's the first or one of the first that set such a high standard with Rod Serling. But what I see you guys do, if there was a modern day Rat Pack of writers with you and Ira and Ronald, you guys took some of the best elements of science fiction storytelling and brought it into Star Trek and made it so beautiful to watch. And that's why, I see why people can rewatch and appreciate this material for decades upon decades, because like I watched the Twilight Zone and I'm still amused by this, the very simple stories that they tell. I'm amused by these stories because they're interesting for me. They challenge me to think. They make me think about the what ifs or the could be's, and also the possibilities. So I think it's always a beautiful thing. The comedy aspect, I think you were giving credit to Michael Dorn, because Michael Dorn did some moments there that I want to ask you, was that just him taking stuff to another level? And this is example of it. When Troy walks by and goes into the
I already
bedroom,
know what you're going to say. Yep,
and he does one of these, like, he's like, what the heck?
So
I know
good.
that wasn't scripted like that. Maybe it was, and maybe he just put extra on it. But the way the looks he gave were just,
they're great. Worf is hands down the funniest character on Next Generation. I'm sure most people would probably gravitate toward Brent and Data, but there's no question that Michael's the funniest character. And the little moment you're referring to, it was not scripted. That was Michael and the director and Marina. That was definitely improvised. And yeah, you're right. It was really, really funny.
I mean, he had so many comedy moments in this. The other one was when he was asking Data about, are we married, and how did we get together? And he says, and then we made it. And he's like, actually, I don't know the details, but I can look into it.
Yeah, no, it's and look, when you're writing these scripts, you kind of, I don't want to say take for granted. You count on the actors and the director and all the filmmakers involved are going to elevate the material. They're going to find those moments. Have you guys gotten to the episode Frame of Mind? Was that in season 7?
Yeah, we already did Frame of Mind. I think it was
so Riker wakes up in an alien insane asylum, and it's
yeah, I think it was season 6. I'm checking.
So
yeah,
I think I said in the last time we talked that my inspiration largely for Next Generation was the Twilight Zone. So I was always looking for the kinds of stories, because the franchise, even at that time, could accommodate any genre. It's one of the things that makes Next Gen so wonderful, is, even more so than Voyager, Deep Space Nine, which had concepts that by definition were more narrow. You could do anything on Next Gen. And I imagine when people tuned in, they weren't sure exactly what they were going to get, because it could be anything. So and personally, I was always looking for the mind-bending, high concept stories.
Well, that's what.
With Rod Serling as my sole inspiration, as the only TV writer that I really knew. Like, writers for TV weren't famous. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I would put Alfred Hitchcock on that list from my own perspective, just watching backwards.
I completely agree. I would categorize him as he's a great filmmaker, and he's probably doesn't get enough credit as a writer. He was heavily involved in all his scripts, but those are my two, though. Those are the top two in my mind, and I think it sounds like for you too.
Yeah, for me too, and that's why I love your episodes so much. That's why when I watch your episodes, I'm like, oh God, I love this. This scratches all of the itches that I have for a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of horror, a little bit of mystery. It's all of those things.
And those concepts also, the directors like them because they're faced with, in Cause and Effect, Frakes had to find a way to shoot that was actually incredibly innovative. He could have taken a lazier route, He found a way to do it. And parallels too, when you're jumping between realities, a lot of specific decisions have to be made about how to dramatize and direct these things. So I think I agree with you.
And we only have you for a couple more minutes here, Brandon. First of all, Cause and Effect, yes, 100%, one of the best episodes ever, in my opinion. But what makes your episodes so great and so interesting is that you're not just writing a good Star Trek story. You're just writing a good Star Trek. I'm sorry, you're just writing a good story that happens to be in the world of Star Trek. You could have that story and put it anywhere else. The parallel universes, it works. It could be a Twilight Zone episode. It could be something else. But, you don't use Star Trek or the world as a crutch. You come up with these really cool concepts. You place it into the Star Trek world and you incorporate the characters in the world into that. And that's why they're so memorable as concepts. They keep you thinking after the episode's over. Your mind just kind of follows it along. And it's beautiful to watch. And an episode like this, we finish it and we think, this is such a Brannon Braga episode.
Yeah.
Well, that is the biggest compliment I could ever get. And I'm very grateful that you're saying it, really. And I'm grateful that there's even an interest over 30 years later, 33 years later. It's amazing. And what's cool about Star Trek is that and it's an added challenge, is that you have to figure out, like, these science fiction concepts are literalized. On Groundhog Day, Bill Murray just, at some point when he's morally stable and becomes the man he knows he needs to be, it stops. There's no explanation. On Cause and Effect, you have to figure out how the hell they're going to get out of this time. Like, we now have scientifically determined what it is. Now you have to get out of it. And same with parallels. Like, you can't just wish your way out of these situations. You have to really kind of vigorously interrogate the concept to literalize it. It has to be
which is the mystery we go on the journey for as the audience. We want to solve this together while we're watching it.
Yep.
I, for example, when they were talking about the chocolate cake turned into a vanilla cake, and I was like, I missed that. How did they get by me? Like, I was upset at myself, and then but I did see when Data and Geordi switched places, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, did they mess this up? They totally messed the blocking up on this one, So, like, in the beginning, I'm thinking I'm catching mistakes in
your Worf too. You're like, wait,
that's really that's amazing.
Yes.
All right.
So, and also, by the way, I love that you start with a personal log from Worf. I'm a big fan of personal logs outside of the captain's log, and then I loved also that you had a bat lift competition because, of course, Worf is going to be
one
happy.
On your wall.
Yeah, right. I did have one. I finished first or ninth. One of the I forgot, but but I loved how you had that as part of the storyline because right away you got my attention. The trophy looked beautiful. Worf is, happy to be a champion, and so all of that made me jump right into the story. So I just wanted to give you credit also for getting me into the story. Sometimes the teaser is just like, what does this have to do with anything, or where are we going with this? But you kind of got us in right away. And
I always look the teasers, which are probably kind of a thing of the past these days, but
yeah,
teasers were a great opportunity. You had to do them. It was just part of the format.
yeah,
Like you could not say, you know what, no teaser in this episode. You have to do it, and it's this weird thing where they couldn't be longer than 3 minutes or something like. So I always looked at them in their best form as kind of an opportunity.
yeah.
And blow up the ship. Do something with your teaser. I'm not saying they were all successful, but
it worked for cause and effect.
Yes, it did.
Well, cause and effect was arguably the most startling of all the teasers, and it would hook you for sure.
It definitely did. Well, Brannon, we want to really, really, really thank you for joining us again today. It's been so much fun. I know we want to pick your brain constantly, and we really are grateful that you took the time to meet with us and talk about this amazing episode that I must have watched 20 times back in the day. And I'm so happy to watch it again with my friend Sirach and for you to join us to talk about it.
Thank you, Brandon. And I also want to say for the future generations out there of the world, they will be looking at you and your fellow writers the way we looked at Rod Serling. And for that, I'm honored to be having this talk with you, Brandon.
Yep.
Man, anytime. And by the way, like The Twilight Zone, your podcast is 30 minutes. What a nice bite-sized.
Kind of.
That's it.
You're in, and it's perfect.
Exactly.
Well, thanks very much, Brandon. Man. Everybody at home, we've got a little bit more coverage of this episode. We will be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week. Lieutenant Worf was triumphant at the Batleth tournament on Forcus 3. The Enterprise is heading into the Argus array. There doesn't seem to be a Klingon word for jolly. Counselor Troi watches Alexander when Worf is away. Commander Riker loves surprise parties. There is a theory in quantum physics that all possibilities that can happen do happen in alternate quantum realities. And Counselor Troi promised Alexander she would feed his Dalvin hissing beetle. It was hard. This is what's funny. Couple things. It was hard for me to come up with trivioids in this one because I realized that I can't state these trivioids as factual bits of information if they're all in different realities. Like I can't say Commander Riker chose Worf to be his first officer because that didn't actually happen in this reality. That's just a potential outcome. So I could only use things that are right across the board. For example, like, Troi watches Alexander while Worf is away. That we know. Riker loves surprise parties. That's confirmed. So anyway, it was kind of hard. But the other side of that is what saved the day. And what I've noticed we've had more of recently, finally, is these beginning parts of an episode have the slice of life. Deep Space Nine did it in almost every episode, and I love it so much, where it's like two people are playing darts, and you're just hanging out, they're sipping a beer, you find out this is so-and-so's favorite beer, or this guy's having problems with this thing, and it's a slice of life. You're just learning about them, and then senior staff to the bridge, the Klingons are attacking, or something, boom. Okay, cool. You jump into the episode. This had that, and we were getting a little bit more of that finally in the 7th season.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of that. Well, let me say, I think this was my favorite episode so far in the 7th season.
I think so, me too.
Just like while I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, this episode missing nothing for me, and missing nothing other than more Picard, because I like Picard so much, but it wasn't missing anything as far as writing is concerned. The scenes played out well. It played out logically for me, or illogically, I guess, however you want to call it. And I want to credit the director, Robert Weimer, because I thought Robert Weimer kept the pace excellently moving. There was never a moment. Actually, I could have used another 10 minutes on this episode. It was that good.
I agree.
Where 10 more minutes would have been fine for me. Just, they could have kept switching realities. It was that good. Like, I wanted more. It left me wanting more. And that's credit to the director, credit to the writing, and also the actors who just kept it very fresh. I thought Troy was phenomenally acted, because she actually got to expand more on her own character. So you get a little character development from her. She was a little bit more playful in this reality. She was kind of content in this marriage and relationship. We've never seen her kind of in that level of contentment in a episode, right? Because her mom is always saying, "Why aren't you married? Why aren't you married?" And putting that kind of pressure on her. But in this episode, we got to see what it would look like if Troy was a happily married woman, right? Let's say. And I thought when she said, "When you go back to your reality, I'm gonna lose my work in this reality." I thought that was
that hit.
Romantic, and that was beautiful.
It hit right, yeah. It hit a note for you, and it's a beautiful line. It's a good setup, but it's also, again, that's a great marriage of writing and acting. She helped us to believe it, and
yes,
it does make sense because you're thinking, wow, from her point of view, she's like, well, hang on, you're telling me, you're not the guy I fell in love with. You're not my Worf. You're not whatever. You're not any of this. You don't remember any of this. I do remember it. I remember it differently. Worf reminds us twice. But anyway, no, I agree. That was really good. And that
was emotional.
I like
that was because of her performance.
Yeah, it was like a Worf episode with Riker and Troy being the secondary characters. Really, that's what it was. And I love that. I love that we had a little triad of who this episode is really about. And
another great moment for me that worked was when Riker says to Captain Picard in the other Captain Picard reality, he says, "It's nice seeing you again."
Yes.
Because he doesn't have Picard in that reality, right? And he was like, "It's nice to see you again, Captain." And Picard looks at him, and then he looks back at the Riker that he already has. So it's like, I don't miss you like you miss me. And I thought that was another great moment. It was just played out well.
It really was, because for me, I felt like we knew he was going to say something there, because he's saying, "Oh yeah, Picard's been dead for 3 or 4 years since the Borg, whatever it was," and he stops. He says, "Oh, Picard says, yes, our data has said the same," and then Riker pauses for a second and just kind of looks at him. And I feel like we all felt it before he even said something, that we're like, is he going to say something? Is he going to, he has to acknowledge it. He says, it's good to see you again. And it was very understated. He could have been like, oh my God, but we felt it. Like, he's still the captain. He's still stern. It's still a very important mission, but we felt it with him. We really were like, oh, he misses his buddy. Because, can you imagine what that must have felt like to see your old mentor, still alive and thriving in a different reality? It kind of almost softens the blow for you,
Yeah. And I thought that was it. And Picard looks at him like, I don't understand how you feel, because that sentiment is not existing in my reality. Right. It was a beautiful moment that I thought was well captured. Riker, Jonathan Frakes, gives a tremendous performance along with Marina Sirtis and Michael Dorn. Jonathan Frakes gives these facial deliveries, these ways, these looks that he gives. For example, when Worf is not raising the shields, when Picard says the ship is within range, and then Riker's like, raise the shield, and Worf doesn't know how. He's like, I don't know the console. I don't know what to do. The buttons don't work.
Yes. Oh my God, dude. And Riker gives him this look. Riker did him wrong. Riker was rude, dude. He was like, first he looks back at him like, what are you, an idiot? And then he looks at Picard like, can I? And he's like, yes, go number one. He comes around and he like looks at him like, get the fuck away from, like, he almost looked like he was disgusted with him.
Yeah.
And he starts pushing buttons. And then they're like, you know, Geordi's been injured. He's taken to sick bay. And then he gives him another look like, I was like, damn, Riker, have a little compassion. Like, he was looking at him like, he was like, you make me sick. I want to throw up that you didn't know how to fire torpedoes. And now he did not hold back. It was killer.
No, it was the like I said, the expressions on his face were just priceless. I wrote, his expressions are priceless because he was all over the place with this episode, just giving us the exact moments what we were feeling his eyes. And so between the three of them, I think the three of them make this my favorite episode of this season so far, without even question.
Yeah, I really like that too. That, you know, sometimes it's a Picard episode or a Troy episode or whatever, but this really did feel like, yes, it was Worf's episode, but it really felt like it was a Worf and Troy and right, like they were the main players. It was about them and their relationship and how things kind of mold around. I also thought that Riker's acting was great in something that we've never gotten to see, which was the desperation when he's like, we can't go back. We won't, you know, like, we can't go back. He was guttural. It was coming out of him. And sometimes Star Trek has been known to be a little stiff in the acting. Yeah. And Jonathan Frakes has never had a chance in 6.5 years to play that kind of frayed edges, desperation and panic. And just, he didn't have like the decorum and the respect and the, you know, professionalism and prestige that he and other bridge officers usually have. It was like a dog eat dog world, and he was just like haggard. And that's the scene and the moment that stood out with me over the decades, where that was the one.
Like we got a little bit of that from Riker in that episode where he was doing that stage play.
That's true.
Remember that episode?
Yeah,
that was
a little bit. He was going crazy. Yeah,
I got a little bit of a channeling that crazy Riker. What I enjoyed for me were just all of the moments, the subtle moments. For example, when Data and Worf are talking, Worf is like, are we married? And she's like, yes, actually, you married 3 years ago or something. And he says,
oh my God, yes.
Remember that? And then Worf says, and then we made it?
It's like, I'm not privy to exactly when, why, where, or how, or whatever he says. He's like, I could investigate. He's like, no. That's I'm already regretting asking you in the first place. Shouldn't have even said anything.
Data killed me in that moment. That was so hilarious. The way that he says, I don't know the details of your exact coupling. That's what he called it.
Yeah. And, you know, along those lines, Marina Sirtis also had a great delivery when he says, when he like kind of half faints and he's like, something has changed again. And he says, are we still married? And she goes, yes. And one word, she gets the Alexander Siddig Julian Bashir Award for this episode of being able to deliver one word or just two words in a way that can, I mean, yes, how much can you, as an actor, you got to rack your brain of how do I make this one line interesting, or do I just say it, right? But she was able to deliver it in kind of like an inquisitive, unsure, like, yes, why are you asking? You know, like she's concerned, she's a little inquisitive, she's a little unsure, but yeah. And again, 3 letters, one word, and it was beautiful. Yeah.
It comes down to delivery. And all through this episode, there was just moments of that. For example, at the end, when Worf is with Troy and they get that moment, he says, I would like to invite you to dinner, right? And she's looking at him like, okay.
She's like, I would love that. And we're like, okay, all right.
And then he goes up to the Replomat and he looks over at her and he's like, champagne. And the way he says champagne, I was like, oh, let's get it on. You can
And
hear
then-
Marvin Gaye playing.
Hell yeah. And then you saw the look on her face. She no words, just like well,
It's a champagne
okay.
moment.
She's
Yeah,
like,
we're doing champagne.
Okay, I'm down.
Oh,
See
okay,
what
we're busting up
happens.
the champagne. Oh, we're going for champagne. You didn't even ask me if I want champagne. You just champagned it.
Yeah, she's like 2 glasses of champagne reminds me of something I heard about Klingons. And that's what she said. That's what she was thinking.
Look, 2 glasses. These are for me.
Yeah, what? Oh, are you gonna? Yeah, he goes 2 glasses of champagne. He's like, oh, what are you having? Like a drunk Klingon? I don't know. I guess.
She's like, okay, never mind. I thought we were having champagne.
And then at the end, when she walks in, and he's back to normal, and he says, "So do you do not live here?" She goes, "What's that supposed to mean?" Another great delivery, like kind of like mocking him, like,
yeah,
what's that supposed to mean, you weirdo? And he just relax. So good.
It was beautiful episode. I loved it all the way around. Like I said, the look that he was giving Troy, like, when he thought he was trying to feel things out with her. Are we married? Are we not? Are we cool? And then really good.
When he says, there was one thing, I also nitpick a little bit here, but when Worf is talking to Troy, and then she's like, Alexander, who's that? He's like, we do not have children. And she says, yes, we have 2 children. And she named a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I'm like, where are they then?
Well, Worf's the dad, he sent them to live with their grandparents.
Yeah, and there's no crib, there's no toys, literally he has a wife and 2 kids, and his pad looks exactly the same as it did when he had his own Batleth tournament in his apartment.
That's how Klingons roll, okay?
He's like, you're not changing anything. Children sleep on the floor. That's it. Or you're out in the hall.
But I have to say my favorite thing of the whole episode. Should I say it now, or we have time for it, or should I?
Please say it now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. This was my favorite moment of the episode that had me rolling beyond belief. There was,
this is going to be good.
Because Geordi's laying there, right? He's laying there burned, right? He's got a burn victim, plasma burn.
And bare, yeah.
Yeah. And he's got his visor off. And they did the thing to see if they activated the visor. And they said, did anything change? And of course, the reality changed when they activated the visor. He was wearing a different outfit. Dr. Crusher was in the room at that moment instead of Ogawa. Right. And the other thing that changed was Geordi had a boner.
Are you serious?
because the blanket that was wrapping him, was like waist high in in the first reality, and then when it went back, it turned into a Brazilian G-string.
The Brazilian nightmare is what that was. Yeah. I noticed that too, and I was like, but I didn't want to go back. But I was like, there's way more cheek showing. Dude, in the first one, he was like, covered waist down. Yeah. In the second one, they're just like, pull it, hike it up a bit, a little bit. Just okay, stop right there. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay, stop.
I've never seen that much skin showing it on a family show. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, dude,
I couldn't believe it. And that would have been my first answer. But Worf, do you notice anything different? He's like, I noticed that Geordi
rigor mortis. Rigor mortis. Yeah, no, I noticed that too, and I'm like, was that deliberate? It had to be deliberate.
Why did that have to matter in that reality? That his jock was showing.
If you wanted to change Geordi, why not just put his arms folded or make it a different color blanket? Why were they like, let's just make this a little, let's just say in this reality, everything's a little sexier.
Let's place a
Even dead
napkin
people.
right over,
Yeah.
just a napkin right over his
A
Like, I
sock.
was like, okay.
Yeah, I did notice that too, and I was afraid. I was like, I think that's where he's going. When you're, I was like, I think I know where he's going.
Weirdest. I was like, what reality are we in where we let guys in the medical room be fully exposed?
Dude.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Maybe in a reality where they all of a sudden, rather than dress uniforms, they're wearing those tiny cloth things like in Justice. Remember when they're running around in toilet paper? What if that was like, he goes, oh my God, Jordy's butt cleavage is showing. Oh my God, I've shown more than that. And the women come jogging in, uppercutting themselves, and he's just,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't go any further than that. YouTube's
that
gonna be
had me
mad.
rolling, though. I was like, that was not necessary, but they must have been laughing for that. That was, I think, the cool kid put that. If I had to guess, that's not in the script.
Yeah, man. So I do want to say overall, this is one of my favorite episodes ever because it's just a great concept. You get great character development. There's so many times I found myself like saying, when's Wes coming back? What if Wes came back and he was a lieutenant? What if Nurse Ogawa got more lines? What if, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm always thinking about these secondary characters, and we got to see that. We got to see more
100%.
of it. And something we teased earlier, the Bajorans beat up the Cardassians, and we're getting more and more aggressive because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it shows that like then the Cardassian was an ensign.
Yeah.
You had a Cardassian ensign,
too.
and the Bajorans were the major threat. So cool, so smart.
Amazing. Just little nuggets like that made this episode just spectacular for me.
Mm-hmm.
This was a perfectly executed science fiction storytelling. Brannon Braga, like I said, put a high score up on this episode. I can see why this is why he's a legendary writer in science fiction. It's because of stuff like this.
Right. And you can see why he was chosen to write this episode. This is a Brannon Braga episode. This is right up his alley.
He loves to be mysterious. He loves to distort reality.
Yep.
He loves a little bit of kind of horror element where you don't know what's going on.
He likes to take chances too,
He's amazing. And hats off to Brannon Braga because this episode for me is the gold standard for this season so far. It is the bar setter.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the home run of today's episode. Sirach Lofton, who gets the home run of today's excellent episode? Thinking hard and long.
The acting was in this episode. It was phenomenal acting. I could give it to anyone where it all starts. Quantum universe parallel. Just a little bit of everything and story development about. Hello?
Yeah, we lost you a little bit there. You're complimenting the acting, but I want to make sure that we've got the home run of today's episode. Go ahead, give it another try.
Oh. No, Bram, you don't?
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
No?
Kind of lost you there for a second.
Okay.
Not really. Okay.
No.
I'm going to do my home run of the episode. Maybe that'll catch us up here. So for me, I should have thought about that actually. Let me think. The home run of today's episode for me, it's going to have to be, I think it's got to be Brannon Braga for writing it. Worf's acting was fantastic. Riker and Troy's acting was fantastic. But I think I have to give it to Brannon Braga for really doing this right. This was a great concept and a lot of fun, and probably a lot of fun for anybody to write. but I feel like Brannon Braga was the right guy to do it, and he did it right, and it's nearly a perfect episode. But it looks like we hear you just fine, Sirach. Who do you have for the home run of today's episode?
Yeah, I agree with you. Home run is Brannon Braga. You got to write it first, and the episode was a perfectly written episode when it comes to science fiction, Star Trek, knowing your characters, and giving us the audience stuff that we want to see. Like, what if Troy were to get together with Worf, and what if Riker's the captain of the Enterprise, and all of these what ifs. And so I think that for that reason, Brannon Braga is the home run hitter.
Right, and it does actually have an impact. It's not like a lot of these snapshots were like bottle episodes in themselves. Like, hey, here's a reality where Picard is dead. Here's a reality where Crusher is back. But it did have a slight impact because at the end, Worf was like, all right, let me consider something romantic with Troy. So it's not everything comes back to one like it usually is. It's everything comes back to 1A. Slight difference. Maybe something between Riker or between Worf and Troy might happen in the future. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. So here are some other interesting people that we would like to give thanks to. Their names are Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, D. Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Cassandra G., Mark Zutkoff, Chris Garris, Linda Pages, Steve Case, a.k.a. Joe Bugbuster, Stephen Monk, Jonathan Capps, and of course, Jason M. Oken, quite frankly. All right.
Yeah.
Let's hop over to the other side, everybody. We will be right back with the free-for-all up next on The Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sirach, Lofton, Sty. This is the free-for-all with Melissa Longo. And Jason M. Oken, Jamu. Allison Leach Hyde's got a cool prune juice and chill shirt on. Eve England's got the Ferengi eyes, I bet, out in Wales. TJ Jackson Bay, look, that looks like the cruise. Hell yeah. Carrie Schwent, awesome shirt. The Wesley Crushers is here. Oh, she's got Worf's painting behind her too, or Data's, I should say. Mark Zutkoff has the obligatory 3 cool images with him. Jonathan Capps flies the ship. Chris McGee says, red alert, everybody. And the Matt Boardman Trek Tour shirt. Nice. All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I like this one, and I think it should be somewhere around a 9.1.
Ooh. Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
8.7.
Sorry, go ahead.
8.7.
8.3.
I was going to say 8.3 as well.
8.4.
8.8.
8.9.
I will give you $1.
Wow. Good job, everybody. I guessed 8.2. Not that I like this episode a lot. I think it should be really, really high, but it was actually an 8.8.
Good job, Matt.
Oh, wow. Great work, everybody.
Man. Blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and welcome to Chris Garris.
Hello.
All right. Non-appearance mentions. We got a whole bunch of these. Let me see. I got Luoxana Troy. I got Alexander. And let me see. Who else did we get? I also got Worf's parents, right? And lastly, here it is. Kern, Worf's brother. Were there any others? It's a whole bunch. All right. What about some kind of or some sort of, Chris McGee?
For the third time in a row, no.
What?
Wow.
Technically second.
Yeah, technically.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yeah. For everybody watching at home, that's an inside joke for us. And let me see. Melissa Longo, will you please get us started off on the right track? Oh, cool background by telling us what you thought of this particular episode.
I enjoyed this episode very much. It kept my attention the whole way through, and I am a Worf fan. This is not a surprise, but I think he really shined in this episode, and because it is a Worf episode, but also because it's a bit of an ensemble episode as well. We do get a lot from everyone on board, and I love that. We get some of Dr. Crusher and lots of Troy and Dr. Ogawa. How awesome was that? And it's just, I loved the mystery of this episode. And yes, I was reading some of the reviews on IMDb, and they're like, another temporal thing problem. And I'm like, yeah, yes. And they did it so well. I loved that. And some of the humor in this really had me chuckling. Like when Worf was asking Data when he and Troy got married, and then he was like, and then we made it. Dana was like, I don't know the exact time you coupled for the first time, but we can look into it if you want. Hilarious. And I just love the idea of the multiple universes that are happening right now. I mean, what is another Melissa doing right at this moment?
Giggling.
I just... and there is some scientific basis to this. Einstein had always said that there's probably multiple realities going on at this very moment. So, yes, I am probably giggling in other universes as well. But I liked seeing a glimpse into what might be happening at that time. Especially like when the one Enterprise gets blown up by the Borg, basically, and how they didn't defeat the Borg, and also that the Bajorans are the antagonizers instead of the ones being repressed. So I don't know. I could say a lot about this episode because I really enjoyed it. But I'll let y'all go, and we'll have to talk in Things Left Unsaid because we can continue the conversation.
That'll be a fun question for Things Left Unsaid. Realities of TNG that we would want to see. Like if this was like a 4-parter and they just kept going on and on and on and on, what different realities. Anyway, thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Great stuff as always. Jason M. Oken, this is a quintessential DS9 Brannon Braga episode, right?
Well, I mean, it is unfiltered Brannon Braga. I guess you get this kind of mind-bending science fiction. There's no real social commentary, no moral lessons, just kind of a trippy story. It's clever, it's funny, it's even surprisingly romantic, and kind of generally disorienting because it starts as a kind of a slow shift to the burn, a slow burn. There are little changes that you kind of go, did I just see that? Was there really a change? And it builds and it builds and snowballs to the point where Worf doesn't even know how to operate the ship and questions what's real and what's not. I think Michael Dorn is absolutely outstanding here. His performance is grounded. He's confused. So and increasingly desperate as sort of his entire world begins to unravel. I think the script is very clever. It is full of direction because you really need to see where the differences are, and sometimes those differences are really subtle. At one point, a clue to the fact that something changed was supposed to be a replacement of one of these trophies with a flower on the table. I'm not sure it was shot the best way. Unless you were looking for it, you wouldn't see it. But the description was very, very precise as to what you were supposed to see and at what point. So that, again, the episode is terrifically entertaining. It keeps your attention for the entire span. And I do want to say, or give a special mention to that shrinking loincloth on LeVar's body that kept changing and getting smaller from universe to universe.
You know, Sirach gave a special mention to that too, Chase. He made a big deal out of it.
Yeah, the script does say that Geordi's supposed to be naked and covered with this cloth. It didn't say he was supposed to shrink. So
that was a director's choice, or maybe it was LeVar's choice.
Not everything was, some of it was kind of flat because you had to follow certain directions here. So it was not the most visually engaging from that point of view. But I think that was a nice choice. So again, wonderfully entertaining. There's a lot more to say. Just a full-on Brannon Braga episode.
Mm-hmm.
My explanation was that he had a boner in that reality.
So no big deal.
Whoops.
Yeah, rigor mortis.
You sure this isn't
that's what I said.
Unsaid?
Rigor mortis. Thank you very
Boy
much.
Scouts are camping underneath that thing.
Jason M. Oken. All right, to clean us up, Allison Leach Hyde knows what to do. What do you think of this one?
I have always liked this episode. It is one of my favorite Worf episodes because we get to just see Worf be Worf and not like battle for his status as a Klingon. So it's nice that way. I do really like Worf and Troy together. I think they work off each other really well. They have a beautiful friendship, which, does move towards something else. And it's really sweet at the end of the episode. I want to give a shout out to the fact that Troy got to wear like 3/4 of every single outfit she's ever worn. And she got to wear the dark blue dress, which is still my favorite. So that was very exciting for me seeing that. The worst universe, though, is the one where the chocolate cake turned to yellow cake. I'm sorry. That was so sad.
Yes.
I'm like, no. Like, you can make those pieces really big, but I still want chocolate cake. So that was sad for me. I thought it was great seeing Wesley, and I wish they would have not put his name in the credits, so we could have been surprised when we saw him. I would have loved that, especially because his part is just, it's not like this big shiny thing. It's just he's now here. So I would have loved that to at least been a surprise for seeing Wesley. But I think it's really fun. It is a bit of a slow burn in the beginning, but it gets really, really exciting when you start seeing the big changes. Otherwise, you're just, did I just lose? No, I didn't. Otherwise, you're just looking for these little things. And I have to say, when Data gave Worf the painting behind Carrie, his face is priceless of like, what? And so I really enjoyed watching his reaction to the painting as it changed throughout the episode too. So tons of fun. I've always liked this episode.
Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde out in New Mexico. See, she saved us. We're all good to go. We're ready for Eve England now in Wales. It is a presentable show for you, Eve, if I could get it out. What do you think of this episode?
Yeah, this is really fun. I just thought this was just such a good sci-fi episode, and it's just, yeah, this is what needs to be in season 7, and this is what I think I've been missing for the last 10 episodes or however many we've got to. I just feel that it just had a bit of everything that you kind of wanted, and it had that good pacing. Worf, I mean, I don't like Worf episodes generally. I often sort of fall asleep in those ones. So this was really refreshing to have Worf doing something else. And I feel that I don't think it would have worked had it been anyone else, because he just can't hide his facial expressions. So you could just see the bafflement on his face every single time. And I just think that sort of, they didn't have to add too much dialogue to it so that you knew that there was something wrong every time. So I think that was a really good way that they brought Worf into it. And I think it worked really well, as everyone has said, with Troy. And I thought their pairing actually really did pack that emotional punch at the end. I think they could have maybe made a bit more of that, because I thought that was really sad, and how she was not going to get her Worf back. Hopefully that wasn't the case. But yeah, I loved again how it sort of started really gradually, and then how how as Data got like blue eyes, like that's just really weird. And then you have all these things, and then I liked how the tone changed when you had things getting more serious, when Geordie died, and then everything it became less humorous, it was less fun, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is pretty serious, there's all sorts of horrible things happening now. And I loved seeing that sort of the parallel Enterprise, all of these things that we've seen in all of these episodes and how things could have been different. I mean, in some ways I was like, oh, maybe there's some episodes there in other quantum universes that would have been better, but I can just that's a nice thing we can talk about in the next segment. My favorite line, I just love that joke about that there's no Klingon word for jolly. I mean, that's just so funny. And yeah, I mean, that was just fantastic. And obviously seeing Wesley there, I think I missed the credits coming up because I was not expecting to see Wesley there. I must have just fast forwarded that bit, but I was like, that's amazing. And I like the fact that he didn't really do much, like you said, that he was just there. And I guess we could have seen Tasha or anybody else there as well. So yeah, this was a really refreshingly good episode.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Eve England out in Wales, who likes it that Wes didn't do much. TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri. What do you think of this one, TJ?
Listen here, my name is Wes, and I'm not in this mess. I'm just kidding. I enjoyed it very much. I always have. It's always been, kind of, up on the list of TNG episodes for me. So it was great to be able to look at it again. And one of the things that really stood out to me, I mean, the performances were great. It was great to see Wes for sure. But I was really keyed in on Marina's performance because, she's playing all of these different versions of Counselor Troy under these different circumstances. So I can see, her shift when she is Worf's wife and then when she's not again. Her reactions, her facial expressions, and I thought she acted that very well, as did Michael in the different situations and circumstances. It was nice to see him in red again. Also, I thought that was interesting, and the first officer, that was neat. Sad that they didn't get Captain Picard back in that reality, but it was interesting. Also, one thing that always sticks in my head and always have for years and years since I've seen this is Riker's reaction when he sees like two Worfs and he's looking like, what? There's a Worf right there. Like, how's he over there too? So that always grabs my attention. And of course, the beat up Enterprise, sad. They would actually attack the shuttlecraft instead of trying to work things out. But that's the way it is when you're desperate. So, watching Worf go through this journey, and I think Eve mentioned it, or someone mentioned it. Like at first, you're maybe wondering, like, did I see that right? Like, was the cake chocolate at first? And when it was on TV, you couldn't just run it back, so you were just wondering, like, did they actually change the cake, or was that the right painting, or like I wasn't paying close enough attention? Was that flour on the table before? No. And so even knowing, it's still fun to kind of watch the subtle changes. There were, I think, several things that I picked up that I maybe didn't see before, watching it this time. So always a fun watch with this episode. Glad to see it again. Can't wait for things left unsaid.
Well, you don't have very long to wait. Thank you very much, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri. Carrie Schwent, Crafty Bear. She's got a painting behind her. What do you think of this one?
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I could say love it a bunch more times, but I won't. And yeah, the painting was very, very cool. Props to whoever actually painted it, because I enjoyed the sort of had Data called it the like impressionist style. It sort of lets your mind sort of figure out on its own what you're looking at. And I'm a major fan of the MCU's whole multiverse saga, the What If and Loki and all these different versions of people. So yeah, this episode definitely hits that sweet spot for me. All the changes were great. Worf looks fantastic in red. That color really suits him. So many facial expressions throughout the episode are just gold when he's having that conversation with Deanna in 10 Forward, and that she mentions that, you know, with her taking this role, that her mom would be his stepmom, and his face is like, oh wait, no, I think I could probably live with that, maybe. Just absolutely fantastic. And I love horror movies, but I'm very susceptible to the jump scare. So I absolutely would have jumped like 10 feet walking into my quarters and have everyone yelling surprise at me, especially once you've come down from, okay, you think you're safe and then you get the jump scare. Not cool. Very, very not cool. The cake, yep, absolutely looked delicious. I personally would, to change it, I would have gone with maybe red velvet, but I can see why they went with yellow cake. It probably would have popped on screen a little bit better, a more obvious change. Oh, and I also loved his trophy, the champion standing trophy. I would absolutely love like a version of that. I think, yeah, props to the art department, whoever created that, because it looks fantastic. And I remembered a handful of things from this episode, but I definitely didn't remember all of it, and I'm pretty sure I was blinking at the wrong time, so I did miss that Will Wheaton. So seeing Wesley pop up on the bridge, I'm like, oh, Wesley, yay! Although I did notice just a tiny, tiny nitpick when they're in the observation lounge. I think his uniform was just a tiny bit too big, because there were like definitely folds, but like just tiny nitpick. It was so great to see him, and just no fanfare about it whatsoever. It's like, oh, just okay, yeah, he's there. Okay, good suggestion, Lieutenant. Yay! And I love how everyone just rallied behind Worf once the changes got big enough that he's like, okay, Worf's like, okay, something really, really weird is going on. Everybody jumped on board to help him. And it occurred to me, and maybe I'm wrong, it felt like they started helping him a lot quicker than they helped Dr. Crusher back in Remember Me. I think that went a little bit longer before people started to try to help her. Maybe that's just me. I'm probably wrong. I do have one other nitpick, but I'll save that for things left unsaid. But in the past, I wasn't a huge fan. I think when I was watching it a bit more casually of Worf and Troy, I didn't really quite see it. But the way we've been going through the series, I'm seeing their friendship develop, and I can kind of see where that would probably go. I will always be a Riker and Troy fan first, but I like this too as a possibility if her and Riker never did end up getting together. I loved the scene of the two of them together when she's telling him to sit on the bed, and then she climbs behind him on the bed and takes his hair thing out, and loose hair Worf. Yay, I want more of it because it looks fantastic loose. Yeah, just more awesome facial expressions from Worf when she's doing that, and just he could not get off the bed fast enough when she kissed him. Yeah, just absolutely just could not stop laughing like the entire episode. So, of course, the limerick for the episode it's got to be from Worf's point of view and his whole what the hell's happening. What's happening? Am I losing my mind? The cake was chocolate, then the yellow kind. Things are constantly changing. People are rearranging. To court Deanna, I might be inclined.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Carrie Schwent, a.k.a. Crafty Bear, proud member of the Wesley Crushers. Mark Zutkoff is up next. Mark, how are you? You love this episode, I bet. What'd you think?
I unabashedly love Parallels.
Nice.
It's in my top 10 TNG episodes. Every time I watch it, I have a big grin on my face. The fun begins in the teaser and in Worf's surprise party, though even here, things start to change. The cake, Captain Picard being present, the changes happen without special effects, just editing within the scene. The seeds of the relationship are planted when Worf talks to Troy about caring for his son, even though it could mean that Lwaxana could be considered Worf's stepmother. The poor Argus array, it's hijacked, malfunctions, used as a spy device, or blown up twice. The sudden transition from Worf's quarters to an unfamiliar bridge console is truly jarring for us as well as Worf. Now we're in a shooting war with the Cardassians. The interactions between Worf and Troy after Worf is relieved of duty, her over-familiarity toward him, and Worf's incredulous facial expressions are hilarious. But things turn serious when Worf, Data, and Troy go to sickbay and find out that again, Geordi must suffer. He's dead. When Dr. Ogawa has Data turn on the late Geordi's visor, reality shifts and Worf is now first officer, and everyone's wearing the future imperfect uniforms and badges. In this reality, Deanna probably didn't learn about her late sister, so her and Worf's little girl is named Shannara, and their boy is Eric Christopher, perhaps for Eric Stillwell and Trent Christopher Ganino, co-writers of the story for yesterday's Enterprise. Alexander doesn't exist. The quantum rift opens and enterprises from different realities begin to pop into space. When they find the right Enterprise with a Worf on their bridge, Captain Riker tells Captain Picard it's been a long time, and I love the reverse shot where Picard looks questionably at his Riker behind him. The sad kiss goodbye as Worf leaves in the correct shuttlecraft Curie, and Troy's pained look tugs on the heartstrings. For a moment, when the shuttle enters the rift, Worf appears multiple times, a visual that blew my mind back in the day. Worf is back to his own reality, and in this one, Troy talked Riker out of throwing Worf a surprise party. Worf orders champagne from the replicator, a moment that was not in the original script and was added by Jerry Taylor at the director's request for a more definitive ending. While I've always been a Riker-Troy shipper, the Worf-Troy relationship works surprisingly well here. And my home pun of the episode, the rift is the cause of Worf's quantum shifting. The shuttlecraft from Worf's own reality is the cure.
Nice. Very good stuff. Thank you very much, Mark Zutkoff. Chris Garris, what's up? You got Riker and Worf behind you. You're leading the way.
Yeah.
What'd you think of this one?
It's honestly for me, I just felt kind of like your good old run-of-the-mill sci-fi episode. You know, we got temporal anomalies. You know, people going through time. You know, I mean, it's a good. It's not a bad episode, but it just for me, it just wasn't just like this. Not like next week's episode when we get to that one. You know, that's a 10 out of a 10 in my world. But but I did like how we go back, like everybody's already said, we go back to the Argus Ray. That thing seems to be always causing problems. It makes someone get super smart at one point in time during the series. This time it's being used supposedly as a spy, a spy device. But some of the scenes the scene that stuck out to me, the two that stuck out to me the most were, for one, when Worf and Troy are talking in Tim Fort, and he's legitimately thanking her for helping him out with Alexander. He's like, you helped me try to become a better father, which maybe not still, but he's at least tried. But then when he basically is asking her wanted to take care of Alexander, and when she tells him that Loxana would be his mother-in-law, basically, and he's like, that look on his face, basically he's like, I'll just take one for the team then to just make it happen. So I'm not gonna lie, that was just that was the first funniest scene for me. And then obviously I think Mark, other people are missing the whole when he doesn't realize he's married to Deanna and she starts getting a little flirty, frisky with him, and he's like, what the hell's going on here? Which of course that leads to stuff later on as we get throughout the season. So, and it also, and I thought about this today as I was watching it, the way we had the Enterprises popping in and all that also made me again think of a future episode that we're going to see here, and how they had multiple Enterprises in multiple realities, and a certain person was popping in and out of time as well. So, makes me wonder if they thought about that when they were writing that episode. But again, overall, it's a good episode. I didn't fall asleep at all, even as being a Worf episode. So yeah, definitely worth a watch.
Thanks very much. Chris Garris out in Texas. Jonathan Caps, what's up? What'd you think of this one? I bet you liked it, right?
Yeah, I like this episode quite a bit. It's obviously not a perfect episode by any means, but it's just very enjoyable to watch. This is kind of, a fun Worf-centric episode in contrast to the more, serious Klingon episodes we usually get when he's the star. And Michael Dorn he's just really good with both subtle comedy and reactions. And I just love the way that, he phrases things. Even like when he's coming back from the Battle competition, he's just like, yeah, the conditions were difficult. Several contenders were maimed, but I was triumphant. Just the way he says it. And then, like, obviously, he's already getting worried about the fact that they're going to throw him a surprise party. And he's like, I'm anticipating a troubling situation. And kind of, he's walking around with Riker and he's just looking around like all over the place. And Riker's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I think it's funny that even when they're singing in Klingon, they're still using "for he's a jolly good fellow" due to the copyright issue. I will say that if someone truly does hate surprise parties, it is kind of mean to force one on him. But I do like all the comedy that kind of comes out of it from this episode. And of course, like everyone's mentioned, the scene with Worf in 10-4 with Troy, and finding out that his Troy's mother would be like a surrogate. He's like, I had not considered that, but it is a risk I'm willing to take. So later on, when Worf finds out, from his point, his thinking that he didn't really win the Bat'leth tournament after all, but instead comes in 9th place. I guess my question is, they give a trophy for 9th place? That doesn't sound very Klingon to me. You really just feel for Worf in this episode. Everything just keeps changing all around him, and he feels like he has no idea what's happening from one moment to the next. And especially, when he becomes partially responsible for the damage to the ship, during the Battle of the Cardassians, and which ultimately leads to Geordi's death. Worf and Troy being married, of course, is a big shock to Worf, and of course, to us, the audience. And of course, as others have mentioned about Worf, when talking to data engineering, asking about the relationship and how it all started, and kind of wondering aloud, like when we made it, it's just funny when Data's just like, well, I don't know the particulars, but I'd be able to, I can investigate for you. And then, one thing I thought was kind of interesting, when we find out that, Geordi has died when they get to sickbay, there, for a moment there's this like great dramatic moment, and you can see kind of the pain and in everyone's eyes. But then when they come back for a commercial, it's like there's like no reaction whatsoever, which always comes as kind of a shock to me, because there was more reaction later on when Worf finds out that Picard's not alive in this. He seems more obviously much more upset about that. Let's see here. And I did like that there was a Dr. Ogawa, and then later when Crusher's even when Worf mentions that Crusher's even sounds shocked to hear Dr. Ogawa. But her tone is almost like, almost a little insulting in that she doesn't even consider that to be within the realm of possibility. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I did like everyone said, I did like seeing Wesley again. And I was glad that he was there without explanation. He just shows up, because and that it works well, in this episode that way. In the universe where Worf and Troy are married and have children, but then Alexander doesn't exist, I always wonder how Worf and Troy got together in that universe, because in ours, they kind of bonded through Alexander. So I thought it was kind of interesting. And then of course I think it's funny when it's the Bajorans that attack the ship, but then of course they quickly disengage when all the Enterprises start to show up. And for me, I just really enjoy the sci-fi concept of the parallel universes, playing out in this episode with all the different possibilities. And I liked the ending with the quantum barriers breaking down. And then the 285,000 hails from all the Enterprises. Seeing the one Enterprise, that's the only one left in this battle with the Borg is pretty haunting, and of course, and then when they have to, shoot the photon torpedo and it destroys it, it's just obviously just very grim, very haunting, but I enjoy that they included that. And then finally, I liked when Worf returns to his own universe and there's no surprise party. And then Troy's line is pretty funny, when she says that you probably want to meditate or hit yourself with a pain stick or something. I'm not a big fan of the Worf Troy relationship, but I do agree that in the context of the episode and everything, it does work. And I guess my final thought is, this is a definite Brannon Braga episode. It's it's not especially deep or even really plausible, but it's just really fun to watch.
Love it. Thank you very much, Jonathan Capps on the Bridge of the Enterprise D. Chris McGee, what say you? Do you love this episode?
I love this episode. It's such a pleasure to see the multiverse theory in action and what it would be like to suddenly find yourself in a different one. And like some of the best mystery episodes, it unfolds slowly with subtle changes at first, like the cake and where Data and Geordi are standing in engineering. Then the big changes start happening with the entire bridge redesigned and, of course, Worf being married to Troy. In a way, this episode is somewhat similar to Tapestry, but it's a more broad interpretation and quietly asks, reading my notes wrong here, quietly asks whether you are defined by your choices or your circumstances. I think they missed an opportunity by having at least one of the Enterprises at the end appear in the same or almost the same position as another one. It would have made for a somewhat more realistic result of the confluence of universes, not to mention adding more danger to the situation. Also, minor nitpick, all of them are oriented right side up, well, more or less, which seems unlikely. Worf appearing in the red uniform, as was noted earlier in some of the realities, was a nice callback to his first season uniform. And speaking of callbacks, I appreciate the many callbacks to previous episodes like Ethics and The Best of Both Worlds. Regarding the latter there, seeing a panicked Captain Riker screaming, "We won't go back," was genuinely one of the more chilling moments in the episode. I'm glad that both Lieutenant J and Ensign Kellogg were invited to Worf's party. Lovely to see them together there. Geordi points out in engineering Starbase 47 on the engineering display. I'm sure that was noted in an earlier segment. And of course, getting Will Wheaton back for a cameo was a nice touch, as has been mentioned before. Apparently, Brannon Braga originally planned to bring back Tasha Yar in that role, but scrapped it because it would have been too similar to yesterday's Enterprise.
Cool.
Oh, well. The resolution, to me, does feel a bit convenient, almost Deus Ex Machina-like, in that everything just goes back to normal as soon as Worf enters the quantum fissure, but I'm okay with it. It's such a great episode. I can live with that. One last note. Robert Orci cited this episode as the scientific justification for both the Prime and Kelvin timelines coexisting after the 2009 Star Trek film.
Very cool. He was one of the co-writers, right?
I believe so. For my memorable quote of the episode, I'm sorry to be mentioned, but I have to choose it anyway, and that's Troy saying, "There doesn't seem to be a Klingon word for jolly."
Lots of great stuff. Thank you very much. Chris McGee. All right. The Matt Boardman. You watched this episode like 40 times. What'd you think?
Well, it's fun to watch it when you're actually paying attention again, because you've seen some of these episodes, you get to a point where you've watched them so many times that they're fun to have on in the background. But I thought it was really fun to watch it this time and pay attention and watch for things that maybe I hadn't realized. I don't know why, but I forgot that Wes was in this episode. So I was like, that was fun. But I thought that they were very clever with some of the things that they did, especially the first few changes in the beginning at the party. Stuff that happens off camera and then comes back on camera and everything. And I thought what was particularly fun about this was that at one point, obviously those of us who've watched the episode enough times know, but I thought what a clever little sleight of hand that they tried to pull on the audience with the concussion angle. Right, that made you go, wait a minute, is this all in Worf's head, or is this actually happening? Like there was a moment there that they threw that little curveball at you to kind of question, though, for those people who think that they're so smart that they have the episode figured out from the beginning, right? So I love the subtle humor, as has been pointed out. One of the ones that cracked me up is when Worf gets the painting from Data, and then he's like, he can't figure it out. And Geordi just walks in and goes, "Oh, the Battle of Horos," right? That was just some great little subtle. I loved the humor that you're just like, it's so that was a great addition to it. And I also, whatever the end, at the end there, when we start seeing all the various enterprises, the one from the timeline of where the Enterprise is not doing well after the encounter with the Borg, that one is always so harrowing to me. And just to me, that is such a fantastic addition, because not only does it call back to an episode, a set of episodes that are fan favorites, but it makes you think, what if? And even the subtle things that, we get this version of the Enterprise where, yes, Picard did not survive that and things are okay, but then we get to see that one and things are not okay. And to me, that would make an interesting comic book series, or an interesting book series, to kind of like it's that like Year of Hell type of difference between the reality that we know and the reality we don't. And then the last thing that I thought that really stood out to me was Troy saying that there was that chance that her Worf would not return. And I mean, it was kind of like I love the way that they layered it. First it starts off as, well, we're married. And then the next is that, well, we have children. And even though we don't see the children, the fact that now we added this additional element of, hey, when this happens and when you go back, there's a chance that I won't have a husband anymore, and these children that I have in this reality won't have a father. And that I love the emotional impact that brings to it. Whether or not you're a fan of the Troy and Worf relationship, they really did a good job in this episode of setting it up. I think that, hats off to both Marina and Michael for playing that so well. Like there's a moment where Troy rests her head against Worf's chest, and like that was such a beautifully acted, wonderfully tender moment between the two. So yeah, fantastic episode.
Fantastic take. The Matt Boardman. All right. Jake's final take. Sirach, any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah. I checked with Memory Alpha, and it turns out Riker is a stud in every alternate universe. So, deal with it. Was happy that, Geordi finally got a chance to take his clothes off. Too bad he was dead. I love when Picard is disappointed in somebody and he hates somebody, because he really hated when Worf was incompetent. And when Worf said permission to be dismissed, he was like, yes, grant, get the hell out of here. Get out of here. And then the last thing I'll say is Riker hates all versions of himself that don't remind him of his best self. So when he saw the distracted Riker, he was like, let me get rid of this guy. Just like he wanted to get rid of the other Riker that he saw last time when he was pissed at him. So he hates all. He hates himself, any other version of himself outside. That's my final take.
Excellent material. Thank you very much, Sirach. Everybody, that's Jake's final take. And thank you very much to the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jonathan Capps, Chris Garris, Mark Zutkoff, Carrie Schwent, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Eve England out in Wales, Allison Leach Hyde, Jason M. Okunjemu, Melissa Longo for myself, Sirach, Melissa, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all for hanging out with us in any reality, and we will see you next time. Until then, always remember the 7th rule.